She checked into the hotel, but she never checked out. In January 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lam vanished inside one of the most infamous buildings in Los Angeles, the Cecil Hotel. At first, it seemed like a normal missing person case, but what investigators uncovered would shock the world and leave a haunting mystery that remains unsolved to this day. This is the story of Elisa Lam and the dark secrets of the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil wasn't just a hotel. It was a place soaked in tragedy. Built in the 1920s, it was once a glamorous destination. But over the years, the surrounding neighborhood decayed. Crime took over, and the hotel became a hotspot for danger and despair. Soon, it earned a chilling nickname, the Suicide Hotel. Dozens of guests jumped to their deaths. Others were murdered inside its rooms. Even two notorious serial killers, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Jack Unterweger, stayed there while committing horrific crimes. By 2013, the Cecil tried to rebrand under a new name, Stay on Main. But no fresh coat of paint could cover up decades of darkness. Elisa was a bright, adventurous young woman from Vancouver, Canada. She loved exploring new places and shared her travels online. In January 2013, she set off on a solo trip down the US West Coast. Los Angeles was one of her last stops. On January 28th, Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel for a few days. She stayed in touch with her family, calling and texting daily. But on January 31st, her messages stopped. No calls, no texts, nothing. Her parents grew worried and contacted the Los Angeles police. Elisa was officially reported missing. Detectives began their search immediately. They scoured the hotel, searching every floor, every room, every stairwell. But Elisa was nowhere to be found. With hundreds of guests coming and going, it was like she had simply vanished into thin air. Days passed with no leads. Then, 2 weeks later, the hotel received disturbing complaints. Guests reported that their water was brown, had a strange taste, and very low pressure. On February 19th, a maintenance worker went to check the rooftop water tanks. What he discovered would haunt him forever. Inside one of the tanks floated the lifeless body of Elisa Lam. For 2 weeks, guests had been drinking, cooking, and showering with water from that very tank. The rooftop was supposed to be a restricted area. The doors were locked and alarmed. To reach the tanks, Elisa would have needed access she didn't have. Even if she somehow got to the roof, the tank lids were heavy. Lifting them alone would be nearly impossible. Detectives were left with more questions than answers. Had Elisa been murdered? Did she climb in herself? Or was something far more sinister at play? Then police released a key piece of evidence. The last video of Elisa alive, captured by a hotel elevator camera. This footage would go viral worldwide. In the video, Elisa behaves strangely. She steps in, presses multiple buttons, but the doors don't close. She peeks into the hallway as if someone is following her, then hides in a corner. Moments later, she makes strange, almost unnatural hand movements. Finally, she steps out of the frame. The doors close behind her, and Elisa is never seen alive again. Theories exploded online. Some believed she was having a mental health crisis. Eliza had a history of bipolar disorder. Others saw something darker. Why didn't the elevator doors close? Was someone holding the button outside? Or was there something paranormal interfering? Some viewers claimed the footage was edited. Frames were missing. Key moments possibly hidden. Others even said Elisa's gestures looked ritualistic, like she was communicating with something unseen. The Cecil Hotel's reputation only fueled the theories. Guests had long reported chilling experiences, whispers echoing in empty halls, cold spots in their rooms, and shadows that moved when no one was there. With so many violent deaths over the years, some believed the Cecil itself was cursed, that it held a dark, unexplainable energy, and Eliza may have been its latest victim. Eventually, investigators ruled Elisa's death an accidental drowning. They suggested she may have been disoriented and climbed into the tank on her own. But that explanation left haunting questions unanswered. How did she bypass the locked doors and alarms? Why was the elevator malfunctioning in such a bizarre way? And most disturbing of all, why didn't anyone hear or see her on the rooftop? The Cecil Hotel has since been rebranded and reopened under a different name. But no amount of renovations can erase its past. To this day, Elisa Lam's death remains one of the internet's most chilling mysteries. Every time you ride a hotel elevator alone, every time you walk down a silent hallway, you might wonder who or what is watching you. If this story gave you chills, subscribe to No One Is Watching, because sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't found in ghost stories. Sometimes they're real, and they might be closer than you think. 5 friends went on a road trip. Only 4 bodies were ever found, and what happened to them remains one of the most chilling mysteries in American history. This is the story of the Yuba County Five, a case so bizarre it's been called America's Dyatlov Pass incident. It was February 1978 in Northern California. 5 young men, Gary, Jackie, Ted, William, and Jack, were close friends. Each of them had mild intellectual disabilities, but they lived mostly normal lives and loved sports, especially basketball. They were excited because their team had a big game coming up. Winning it would mean a trip to Los Angeles for a championship tournament. On the evening of February 24th, the group piled into Jack S. Turquoise Mercury Montego and drove 50 miles to watch a college basketball game. They never came home. When the men didn't return that night, their families panicked. These weren't guys who stayed out late, especially not with their tournament the next day. By morning, police were involved. The search began immediately. The next day, Jack's car was found abandoned in the Plumas National Forest. But here's the first strange detail. The car was in perfect working order. It wasn't stuck out of gas or damaged. The keys weren't even missing. Yet it sat on a snow-covered road, far from where the men were supposed to be. Why would 5 men willingly leave a safe, warm car to wander into a freezing wilderness at night? As rescuers combed the area, a brutal snowstorm rolled in, forcing them to halt the search. For days, the mountain swallowed every trace of the missing men. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. Then, in June, 4 months later, hikers made a horrifying discovery. In a remote area, nearly 20 miles from where the car was found, they stumbled upon a small U.S. Forest Service trailer. Inside was the body of Ted Wyhar, lying on a bed under 8 neatly folded sheets. Ted was emaciated, weighing just 60 pounds. His shoes were missing, and his beard had grown significantly. Proof he'd been alive for weeks after going missing. Someone had wrapped him carefully, almost like they were trying to keep him warm and alive. But there was no sign of food in the trailer, despite plenty of canned rations nearby. Even more disturbing, the propane tank outside, which could have heated the cabin, was untouched. It was as if Ted, or whoever was with him, didn't understand how to survive, or was too terrified to move. Soon after, investigators found the remains of Jack and William. Their bodies were scattered miles from the trailer, partially consumed by wildlife. Gary's remains were never found at all. Only Jackie's body was discovered later, near a stream. The distance between each location was staggering. It was as if the group had scattered in blind panic, each running in a different direction. But what were they running from? Theories swirled. Some believed the men were chased by someone or something through the forest. But there were no signs of struggle near the car, and no footprints left in the snow. Others thought Gary, who had a history of mental health issues, may have suffered a breakdown and led the others astray. But his family insisted he was stable and would never intentionally harm his friends. Then there's the truly bizarre detail. Gary had recently stopped taking his schizophrenia medication. If he had a psychotic episode that night, it might explain the chaos. But would that really cause 5 men to flee into the freezing wilderness without coats or supplies? Some witnesses came forward with chilling reports. A woman claimed she saw the men in a red pickup truck the night they vanished. Another said she saw a group of men in a small store, looking confused and scared. But none of these sightings could be confirmed, and no evidence ever tied anyone else to the case. One theory connects this case to a violent confrontation. The day before the men vanished, a local man reported being attacked in the very same forest. He claimed strangers had surrounded him, and he barely escaped alive. Could this have been connected? Were the Yuba County Five fleeing from an attacker, or was it just a horrifying coincidence? Despite decades of investigation, no clear answers have emerged. The evidence is maddeningly contradictory. Why didn't they use the food and supplies in the trailer? Why didn't they light the propane heater? Why were their bodies spread so far apart? And why was Gary, the 5th friend, never found? Today, the case remains open. Some believe it was simply a tragic accident. Others are convinced there was foul play, or even something supernatural lurking in those snowy woods. The truth may never be known, but one thing is certain. 5 friends went into the forest that night. Only 4 came back, and none of them alive. Every time you take a late-night drive on an empty road, every time you find yourself deep in in the wilderness, far from help. Remember the Yuba County Five, because sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't what you can see. It's what's waiting in the dark, just out of sight. Subscribe to No One Is Watching for more haunting stories like this. Because these mysteries aren't just stories. They really happened, and they could happen again.